The rain drummed against the windshield of Marcus Holloway's rusted Ford pickup as he pulled up to the address scrawled on the crumpled paper in his pocket. The wipers squeaked in protest, their rubber blades barely clearing the October drizzle that had been falling over Detroit for 3 straight days. Through the smeared glass, he could make out the skeletal silhouette of an industrial warehouse, its brick facade stained with decades of urban decay. "The 1247 Riverside Industrial Drive," he muttered, double-checking the address against the legal documents scattered on his passenger seat. The lawyer's voice still echoed in his head from that morning's phone call. "Your great-uncle Theodore left you everything, Mr. Holloway, the property and, well, there's a dog." Marcus killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence, his calloused hands gripping the steering wheel. At 34, he looked older, the kind of weathered that came from 2 tours in Afghanistan and 2 years of sleepless nights since Lisa's funeral. The warehouse loomed before him like a monument to abandonment, its broken windows reflecting the grey sky like dead eyes. He hadn't even known he had a great-uncle Theodore. The manila envelope on the seat contained everything the estate lawyer had given him: a deed, some insurance papers, and a single photograph of an elderly man standing next to a German shepherd. On the back, someone had written in shaky handwriting, "Rex and me, 2019. He's a good boy, Marcus. Take care of each other." Marcus pocketed his keys and stepped out into the drizzle. The industrial district stretched around him like a graveyard of American manufacturing. Empty lots where factories once stood, buildings with broken windows and rusted fire escapes, weeds growing through cracked asphalt. The only sounds were the distant hum of highway traffic and water dripping from corrugated gutters. The warehouse's main door was secured with a heavy padlock, but the key from the envelope worked smoothly. Too smoothly, Marcus noticed with the paranoia that never quite left him after the service. The door swung open on well-oiled hinges, releasing the smell of machine oil, old wood and something else. Something alive. "Hello?" he called into the darkness. His voice echoed off concrete and steel, swallowed by the vast interior space. A soft whine answered him. Marcus found the light switch, and fluorescent tubes flickered to life overhead, illuminating a space that defied his expectations. The warehouse wasn't empty, it was organized. Shelves lined the walls, filled with carefully labeled boxes. Workbenches ran down the center, equipped with tools that looked expensive and well-maintained. In one corner, a small living area had been constructed, a cot, a hot plate, a mini refrigerator humming quietly, and there, on a thick dog bed beside the makeshift kitchen, lay Rex. Marcus's breath caught. The German shepherd was massive, easily 90 pounds, but he looked diminished somehow. His black and tan coat was dull, his breathing labored. When he lifted his head to look at Marcus, his dark eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost human, and a weariness that Marcus recognized in his own mirror. "Hey there, boy." Marcus approached slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. Military training died hard, even with dogs. Rex's tail gave a weak thump against the concrete floor, but he didn't try to stand. A water bowl sat nearby, barely touched. Next to it, a pile of veterinary papers and prescription bottles told the story. Chronic kidney disease, stage 3. Medication schedules written in careful handwriting. An appointment card for something called Comfort Care Assessment, dated 2 weeks ago. "Jesus," Marcus whispered, kneeling beside the dog. "How long has he been alone here?" Rex lifted his head and placed it against Marcus's knee. The gesture was so trusting, so resigned, that Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He hadn't cried since Lisa's funeral, but his eyes burned now. "Okay," he said quietly, stroking the dog's graying muzzle. "Okay, we'll figure this out." Marcus spent the next hour exploring his inheritance. The warehouse was a maze of mysteries. The boxes on the shelves contained everything from vintage car parts to military surplus gear. One entire section was dedicated to electronics, radios, scanning equipment, devices he didn't recognize. Another held camping gear, survival supplies, enough MREs to last months, but it was the workbench that caught his attention. Among the tools and half-finished projects, he found notebooks filled with his great-uncle's handwriting. Most of it was incomprehensible: radio frequencies, license plates, timestamps, cryptic abbreviations. But one entry, dated just 3 weeks ago, was different. "They're getting closer. Rex knows it too. Been pacing all night. If something happens to me, I hope Marcus is half the soldier his father was. The boy's going to need all the help he can get. Rex will show him when the time comes. Dog's smarter than most people I've known." Marcus felt ice in his veins. He flipped through more pages, finding similar entries stretching back months, references to watchers and the Detroit operation, and too much money to ignore. One page contained a rough map of the warehouse, with an X marked in the northeast corner, along with the notation, "Rex found it first. Good boy, never forgets." A soft bark interrupted his reading. Rex was standing now, swaying slightly but determined. The dog looked at Marcus, then toward the northeast corner of the warehouse, then back at Marcus. The message was clear. "Follow me." "What is it, boy?" Marcus closed the notebook and followed. Rex moved slowly but purposefully, his nose close to the ground despite his obvious weakness. He led Marcus past the organized shelves, past workbenches covered in dust tarps, to a section of the warehouse that looked different from the rest. The concrete floor here was newer, cleaner, and in one spot, barely visible unless you were looking for it, the concrete had been patched. Rex stopped at the patch and sat heavily, his breathing labored. He looked up at Marcus and whined once, a sound that somehow conveyed urgency despite his exhaustion. Marcus knelt and ran his hands over the concrete. It was definitely newer than the surrounding floor, and when he tapped it with his knuckles, the sound was hollow underneath. "What did you find, Rex?" The dog's tail wagged once, weakly, but his eyes were bright with purpose. Marcus returned to the workbench area and found what he needed: a sledgehammer and a pry bar. Rex watched from his spot by the patch, occasionally letting out encouraging whines as Marcus began the work of breaking through the concrete. The first crack appeared after 20 minutes of careful strikes. By the time the sun had set outside the warehouse windows, Marcus had cleared away enough concrete to reveal a steel access panel set into the floor. It was secured with a combination lock that looked military-grade. "Any idea what the combination might be?" he asked Rex. The dog padded over to a nearby shelf and pawed at something underneath. Marcus found it wedged behind a box of motor oil, a small piece of paper with 6 numbers written in his great-uncle's handwriting. The lock clicked open. The steel panel lifted to reveal a shaft that descended into darkness. A ladder was bolted to one wall, and at the bottom, maybe 15 feet down, Marcus could see the edge of what looked like a substantial underground room. Rex whined and paced at the edge of the opening, clearly wanting to go down, but lacking the strength. "Stay here, boy. I'll check it out." Marcus descended the ladder, his phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. The underground room was larger than he'd expected, maybe 20 by 30 feet, with concrete walls and a ceiling high enough for him to stand upright. But what dominated the space made him forget everything else. Steel shelving lined every wall, and on those shelves sat stack after stack of currency. Not just any currency, $100 bills, banded and organized with the kind of precision that spoke of professional money handling. Marcus grabbed one bundle at random and flipped through it. Real bills, not counterfeits. He grabbed another, then another. In the center of the room sat a steel desk with a laptop computer and more notebooks. Marcus opened the nearest notebook and found detailed records, dates, amounts, sources. The most recent entry was dated the day before his great-uncle's death. Final count, $52,847,000. The Detroit families won't stop looking. Neither will the Russians or the Colombians. They all think it's theirs. Rex and I are running out of time. If something happens to me, Marcus will have to decide. Take the money and run, or stay and fight. Either way, he'll need Rex. The dog knows where the rest of it is. The rest of it? Marcus climbed back up the ladder, his mind reeling. Rex was exactly where he'd left him, lying beside the opening but alert, watching. $52 million, Marcus said aloud, testing how the words sounded. Jesus Christ, Rex, what did the old man get himself into? Rex's ears perked up at something Marcus couldn't hear. The dog struggled to his feet and padded toward the warehouse's main entrance, a low growl building in his throat. Marcus followed, every combat instinct suddenly on high alert. Through one of the high windows, he could see headlights approaching, multiple vehicles moving slowly, deliberately. Not the random pattern of traffic, but the coordinated movement of people with purpose. Rex positioned himself between Marcus and the door, hackles raised despite his obvious weakness. Whatever was coming, the dog recognized the threat. Marcus killed the warehouse lights and moved to a window. 3 dark SUVs had pulled up outside, and men were getting out. Even in the darkness, he could see they were armed. His great-uncle's words echoed in his mind. They're getting closer. Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. We know you're inside. We just want to talk. Come out with your hands visible and bring the dog. Rex growled deeper, his eyes never leaving the door. Marcus looked from the dog to the hidden shaft that contained more money than he'd ever dreamed of, then back to the armed men gathering outside his inherited warehouse. His great-uncle had left him more than property. He'd left him a war. And judging by the way Rex was positioning himself for a fight, despite his failing health, this war was far from over. The dog's growl turned into a bark as footsteps approached the warehouse door, and Marcus realized his quiet life of grief and solitude had just exploded into something deadly. With Rex as his only ally and 52 million reasons why neither of them might survive the night. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. Marcus pressed himself against the wall beside the window, Rex maintaining his defensive position despite the tremor in his legs. Through the grimy glass, Marcus could see the leader of the group, a man in an expensive suit that looked out of place in the industrial wasteland. "Mr. Holloway," the man called through the door, his voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus couldn't place. "My name is Victor Kozlov. I believe we have mutual interests to discuss." Rex's growl intensified at the sound of the voice, and his hackles rose higher. Whatever this Victor represented, the dog had encountered it before, and it wasn't friendly. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo. Lisa's gravestone, fresh flowers placed at its base. The message that followed made his blood freeze. Beautiful flowers. Would hate for them to get lonely. The threat was clear, but it also told Marcus something important. These people didn't know Lisa was already dead, which meant they'd done their homework incompletely, and that was a tactical advantage. "I'm alone in here," Marcus called back, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "What do you want?" "Theodore Holloway was holding something that belongs to my associates. We'd like it back." Marcus looked down at Rex, who was now staring intently at a specific section of the warehouse, not toward the door where the voices were coming from, but toward the back wall. The dog's nose was working, and his ears were pricked forward with an alertness that seemed to cut through his illness. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus replied. "I just inherited this place today." Victor's laugh was cold. "Theodore was many things, Mr. Holloway, but careless was not one of them. He wouldn't leave his collection unprotected, and he certainly wouldn't leave Rex unprotected." The way he said the dog's name sent ice through Marcus's veins. These people knew Rex personally. Marcus made a decision that went against every survival instinct, but felt right in his gut. He moved away from the window, toward the back of the warehouse where Rex was focused. As he got closer, he realized what the dog had detected. Another entrance, hidden behind a false wall made of the same brick as the exterior, barely visible in the dim light filtering through the high windows. Rex padded over to a seemingly random spot on the floor and sat, looking up at Marcus expectantly. When Marcus knelt and felt along the concrete, his fingers found a recessed handle. The section of floor lifted to reveal another shaft. this one leading not down but horizontally through what must be a tunnel. "Smart dog," he whispered. Rex's tail gave a weak wag, but his eyes remained serious. He pawed at Marcus's leg and then looked toward the tunnel entrance. The message was clear: this way. Outside, Victor was growing impatient. "Mr. Holloway, I'm going to count to 10. If you don't come out with the dog, we're going to come in, and we're going to be much less polite about our conversation." Marcus grabbed his great-uncle's notebooks from the workbench and stuffed them into a backpack he found nearby. Rex watched approvingly, then picked up something in his teeth, a small canvas bag that had been hidden under his bed. The dog carried it to the tunnel entrance and dropped it at Marcus's feet. Inside the bag, Marcus found items that made his great-uncle's true nature suddenly clear. Fake IDs, untraceable credit cards, cash in multiple currencies, and a military-issue sidearm with extra magazines. But most revealing was a photograph tucked into a side pocket. A younger Theodore in combat fatigues, standing with a group of soldiers and military working dogs. The notation on the back read, "K9 Special Operations Unit Classified Location, 2003. Rex's father, Duke, Center." Rex wasn't just a pet. He was military royalty. And the apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. "5 seconds, Mr. Holloway." Marcus slung the backpack over his shoulders and looked at Rex. "Can you make it through there, boy?" Rex was already moving toward the tunnel entrance, his weakness temporarily overridden by purpose. Marcus followed, pulling the floor section closed above them just as he heard the warehouse door explode inward. The tunnel was wider than he'd expected, obviously constructed with care and resources. Emergency lighting activated as they moved through it, solar-powered strips that cast just enough illumination to navigate. Rex moved ahead with surprising confidence, clearly familiar with the route. They emerged 15 minutes later through a concealed exit in the basement of what appeared to be an abandoned auto repair shop 6 blocks away. Rex led Marcus up a narrow staircase to the main floor, where another surprise waited. This wasn't abandoned at all. It was a fully operational safe house, complete with surveillance equipment, communication gear, and enough supplies for a long-term stay. Multiple monitors showed different angles of the warehouse they'd just escaped. Marcus watched as armed men searched the building systematically, their movements professional and coordinated. Victor stood in the center of the main floor, clearly frustrated, barking orders into a radio. But the real revelation came when Marcus opened the surveillance system's archived footage. Hours of video showed his great-uncle's daily routine over the past several months. Theodore hadn't been a reclusive old man. He'd been conducting an operation. The footage showed meetings with various individuals, money being moved in and out of the warehouse, and most importantly, Rex actively participating in what looked like training exercises. In one particularly telling sequence from just 2 weeks ago, Marcus watched Rex demonstrate an extraordinary ability. The dog could detect hidden compartments, concealed weapons, and even identify specific individuals by scent alone. In the video, Theodore spoke to someone off camera. "Rex isn't just trained for bombs anymore. I've taught him to hunt money, drugs, and people. He's the best asset I've ever worked with." Marcus looked down at the real Rex, who was now drinking water from a bowl that had obviously been placed there specifically for him. Despite his illness, the dog's eyes held the same sharp intelligence Marcus had seen in the best-working dogs overseas. A new voice crackled through the surveillance system's audio feed. Marcus turned up the volume and felt his blood chill. "Victor, this is Antonio Rossetti. Any luck with the gringo?" "The warehouse is clean, except for some electronics and tools. But they were here recently. The dog bed is still warm and there's fresh food out. Find them. That money belongs to the Chicago families, and we're not leaving Detroit without it." "Maha." A third voice joined the radio conversation, this one with a distinctly different accent. "This is Carlos Mendoza. My people are watching all the exits from the industrial district. Nobody gets out without us knowing." Rex's ears perked up at each name, and Marcus realized the dog was cataloging the voices, storing them for future reference. This wasn't just a sick pet. This was a tactical asset with years of specialized training. Marcus opened more of his great-uncle's notebooks and found the missing pieces of the puzzle. Theodore hadn't stolen $52 million. He'd been hired to hide it. 3 separate criminal organizations had been using him as a neutral party to store the proceeds from a joint money laundering operation. But Theodore had discovered they were planning to eliminate him once the job was complete. So he'd decided to eliminate them first by simply disappearing with their funds. The plan had been perfect, except for one thing. Theodore's death had been sudden, caused by a heart attack before he could complete his exit strategy, which left Marcus and Rex holding $52 million that 3 different criminal organizations were now actively hunting. But the notebooks revealed something else, something that made Marcus's military training kick into high gear. Theodore had been documenting not just the money's location, but detailed intelligence on all 3 organizations, their leadership structures, their ongoing operations, their weaknesses. And according to the final entries, he'd been preparing to turn everything over to the FBI. A sealed envelope tucked into the back of the notebook contained a business card for Special Agent Sarah Martinez, along with a note: "If something happens to me, Agent Martinez will know what to do. But be careful who you trust. The corruption goes deeper than anyone realizes." Rex suddenly stood and padded to one of the surveillance monitors, pawing at the screen. Marcus followed his gaze and saw what the dog had spotted. A 4th vehicle had arrived at the warehouse, this one unmarked, but clearly law enforcement. 2 people in FBI windbreakers were talking to Victor Kozlov, and their body language suggested this wasn't an adversarial conversation. Marcus felt the walls closing in. The criminals wanted the money, but if some of the FBI were compromised, turning himself in could be just as dangerous. And Rex, despite his deteriorating condition, was clearly the key to everything. The old dog knew secrets that Marcus was only beginning to uncover. The surveillance system's phone rang, making both Marcus and Rex jump. Marcus hesitated, then answered. "Theodore Holloway's residence." "Is this Marcus?" The voice was female, professional, but with an undertone of urgency. "Depends who's asking." "Agent Sarah Martinez, FBI. Theodore told me about you. Listen carefully. You're in immediate danger. Victor Kozlov isn't just a criminal. He's working with corrupt agents in my own bureau. You cannot trust anyone in law enforcement until we sort this out." Marcus watched the surveillance monitor, showing Agent Martinez's supposed colleagues chatting with known criminals. "How do I know you're not one of them?" "Because Rex is sitting right next to you, and he's trained to attack on the command word Nemesis. Theodore used that word to program him to identify threats. If I were compromised, Rex would be going crazy right now." Marcus looked down at Rex, who was calmly watching the monitors, showing no signs of agitation at the voice on the phone. "What do you want from me?" "Theodore was working with us to bring down the biggest money laundering operation in the Midwest. We need that evidence he collected, and we need Rex. That dog has been trained to identify every major player in this network. But more importantly, we need you alive, because according to Theodore's last communication with us, you're the only one Rex will trust completely now." Udam. On the surveillance monitor, Victor was clearly getting impatient with whatever his FBI contacts were telling him. Marcus watched him gesture angrily toward the warehouse, then point in the general direction of the auto shop. "They're starting to expand their search pattern," Marcus said. "I know. I'm tracking them from our surveillance post. But there's something else you need to know. Rex isn't just sick with kidney disease. Theodore's veterinary records were falsified. Someone's been slowly poisoning him." Marcus felt rage surge through him as he looked down at the dog who'd trusted him enough to lead him to safety. Rex seemed to sense his emotion and leaned against his leg, offering comfort even while suffering. "Who? We're not sure yet. But the timing suggests it started right around the time Theodore began documenting evidence against the network. Someone wanted to eliminate both the handler and his dog before they could testify. The surveillance monitors suddenly went dark. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but the damage was clear. They'd been found. "Agent Martinez!" "I'm here. They've cut your external communications, but they haven't found your location yet. You need to move now." Rex knows where Theodore kept the backup evidence. Follow his lead and get to the river. There's a boat waiting. The line went dead. Rex was already moving, not toward the tunnel they'd used to enter, but toward another concealed exit Marcus hadn't noticed. As the dog pawed at what looked like solid wall, Marcus found the hidden mechanism and opened it to reveal a narrow passage that sloped downward. Behind them, footsteps echoed in the tunnel they'd used earlier. Victor's people had found their escape route. Marcus shouldered the backpack and followed Rex into the narrow passage, pulling the hidden door closed behind them. The dog moved with renewed energy, as if the urgency of their situation had temporarily overridden his illness. As they descended through the passage toward whatever Theodore had prepared as his final escape route, Marcus realized that Rex wasn't just his inherited companion. He was his ticket to survival in a game where the rules kept changing, and the only constant was that everyone wanted them both dead. The passage led them through what felt like miles of underground tunnels, some clearly part of Detroit's forgotten infrastructure, others obviously constructed by Theodore over years of careful planning. Rex moved with the confidence of familiarity, his illness temporarily forgotten in the urgency of their escape. Emergency lighting flickered on motion sensors as they progressed, creating a trail of illumination behind them that Marcus hoped their pursuers wouldn't follow too quickly. They emerged through a concealed exit in the basement of a seemingly abandoned building near the Detroit River, but as Rex led him upstairs, Marcus realized this was another of Theodore's safe houses, and this one revealed the true scope of his great-uncle's operation. The main floor had been converted into a command center that would have impressed military intelligence. Wall-mounted monitors displayed real-time feeds from dozens of locations throughout Detroit and beyond. Maps covered every surface, marked with colored pins, routes, and notations in Theodore's precise handwriting. But most shocking was the evidence wall. Hundreds of photographs connected by colored string, showing connections between politicians, law enforcement officials, judges, and known criminals. At the center of it all was a photograph of a distinguished man in a federal judge's robe, the Honorable Robert Kellerman, Chief District Judge for Eastern Michigan. Rex sat beneath Judge Kellerman's photograph and barked once, sharp and definitive. "Good boy," Marcus whispered, understanding. "You know him, don't you?" Marcus found Theodore's master files in a fireproof safe that opened to Rex's paw print, literally. The biometric scanner had been programmed to recognize the dog's unique pad pattern. Inside, the truth was laid out in meticulous detail. Judge Kellerman wasn't just corrupt, he was the architect of the entire money laundering network. Using his position, he'd been coordinating the movement of criminal proceeds through legitimate businesses, real estate transactions, and even federal asset forfeiture programs. The $52 million Marcus had found was just one cache in a system that had moved over 300 million in the past 3 years. But the files revealed something even more devastating. Marcus's own wife, Lisa, had stumbled onto part of the operation during her work as a court reporter. According to Theodore's investigation, Lisa had been transcribing sealed proceedings when she noticed discrepancies in asset forfeiture cases. She'd started asking questions, making copies of documents, and 2 days before her car accident, she'd contacted Theodore. Marcus's hands shook as he read the final file, a detailed reconstruction of Lisa's death. The brake line failure hadn't been accidental. Judge Kellerman had ordered her elimination, carried out by Victor Kozlov's people with help from corrupt FBI agents who ensured the investigation was superficial. Rex whined and pressed against Marcus's leg, sensing his emotional turmoil. The dog's eyes held a depth of understanding that was almost human. And suddenly, Marcus realized why Theodore had left Rex to him specifically. The old man had known that eventually Marcus would learn the truth about Lisa's death. And when that moment came, Rex would be there to keep him focused on justice rather than revenge. A secure phone on Theodore's desk rang. Marcus answered, expecting Agent Martinez. "Marcus, this is Sarah Martinez. Thank God you made it to the River House. Listen carefully. The situation has deteriorated rapidly." "Agent Martinez, I found Theodore's files. I know about Judge Kellerman. I know about Lisa." A pause. "Then you know why this is personal for all of us. Theodore wasn't just a confidential informant. He was my father." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Your father?" Theodore Martinez was his cover identity. His real name was Teodoro Martinez, and he'd been undercover in the military contractor community for 15 years. When he discovered the scope of Kellerman's operation, he knew he couldn't trust anyone in the Bureau, except me. But even I didn't know how deep the corruption went until yesterday. Rex's ears perked up at something Marcus couldn't hear. The dog moved to the window facing the river and gave a low, warning growl. "They've found us," Marcus said, watching boats approach the shoreline. "I know. I'm tracking them from our surveillance post. But Marcus, there's something crucial you need to understand. Rex isn't just trained to detect money and identify suspects. My father programmed him with something much more valuable. He has perfect recall of every person, every location, every conversation he's witnessed over the past 3 years. Rex is a living witness to crimes that could bring down the entire network." Marcus looked down at the dog with new respect. "He's a recording device. More than that, Rex has been trained to lead authorities to evidence caches, identify specific individuals, even in disguise. And most importantly, he can distinguish between legitimate law enforcement and corrupted agents. That's why Kellerman ordered him poisoned, not to kill him quickly, but to degrade his mental faculties before anyone realized what he was." The boats were closer now, and Marcus could see armed figures preparing to disembark. "What about the antidote?" "There is one, but it's experimental. Theodore kept a supply here for emergencies. Rex knows where it is." As if summoned by his name, Rex padded over to what looked like an ordinary filing cabinet. But when Marcus opened it, he found it had been converted into a small veterinary supplies storage unit. Rex poured at a specific vial, looking up at Marcus expectantly. "How do I know this won't hurt him?" "You don't, but without it, he'll be dead in weeks anyway. And Marcus, we need him alive and lucid for what comes next." Marcus prepared the injection according to the instructions taped inside the cabinet. Rex submitted to the needle with the stoicism of a professional, his dark eyes never leaving Marcus's face. The effect was almost immediate. Rex's breathing became less labored, his eyes brighter, his posture more alert. The dog shook himself once, then moved with renewed purpose to a section of the command center Marcus hadn't fully explored. Rex pawed at a particular monitor, and when Marcus activated it, he found himself looking at live surveillance footage from inside Judge Kellerman's private chambers. The audio was crystal clear as the judge spoke to someone off camera. "The dog is the problem. As long as Rex is alive, he can lead them to evidence we thought was destroyed. The money is replaceable. The dog is not." Viktor Kozlov stepped into view. The old man trained him too well. "Rex has been inside our operations, witnessed our meetings. If they find a way to extract what he's seen, then we lose everything," Kellerman finished. "Eliminate both the veteran and the dog tonight. Make it look like a drug deal gone wrong." The feed cut to black as footsteps echoed in the building below them. "Agent Martinez, they're inside. I'm en route with backup, but you need to buy us time. Rex knows the final escape route, through the river tunnel. But Marcus, before you go, there's one more thing you need to see." Rex had moved to another monitor and was poring insistently at the screen. When Marcus activated it, he saw footage that made his blood freeze. His own apartment building, with surveillance teams positioned at every exit. "They're watching your place," Martinez confirmed, "but that's not what Rex wants you to see. Check the timestamp." The footage was from 2 years ago, the night Lisa died. Marcus watched in growing horror as his wife's car was accessed in the parking garage by someone who was clearly tampering with the brake system. The perpetrator's face was clearly visible when he looked up at the security camera. Agent David Morrison, one of the FBI agents Marcus had seen consorting with Victor at the warehouse. Morrison was Theodore's FBI handler before I took over the case, Martinez explained. When Lisa started asking questions, Kellerman ordered her eliminated. Morrison arranged the mechanical sabotage, then falsified the accident investigation. Rex barked sharply, a warning. Multiple sets of footsteps were now climbing the stairs toward their floor. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a cold clarity he hadn't experienced since combat. Lisa's death hadn't been random. These people had murdered his wife to protect their criminal empire, then sat back and watched him grieve, never knowing he was the great-nephew of their most dangerous enemy. "Rex, show me the tunnel." The dog led him to what appeared to be a solid wall, but when Marcus felt along its edges, he found the concealed mechanism. The wall section swung inward to reveal a tunnel that sloped downward toward the river. But before entering, Rex made one more stop at Theodore's desk. He nosed open a drawer and retrieved a waterproof bag containing what Marcus immediately recognized as Theodore's complete evidence files, the originals of everything that could bring down Judge Kellerman's network. "Smart dog," Marcus murmured, securing the bag in his backpack. The tunnel led them to a hidden dock beneath the building, where a small but powerful speedboat waited, fueled and ready. Rex jumped aboard with the confidence of someone who'd done this before, positioning himself at the bow like a living figurehead. As Marcus started the engine, explosions rocked the building above them. Victor's people weren't being subtle anymore. The boat shot out into the Detroit River, and Marcus felt momentarily free. But the feeling didn't last long. Behind them, larger boats were already in pursuit, and ahead, more vessels were moving to intercept them. "Agent Martinez, we're on the water, but we're surrounded. I see you on our tracking system. There's a Coast Guard cutter approaching from the north. They're legitimate, I promise, but you need to reach them before Kellerman's people intercept you." Rex suddenly barked and pointed with his nose toward a section of the riverbank that looked uninhabited. Marcus followed the dog's direction and saw what he'd spotted: a small Coast Guard patrol boat, its crew waving them over. But as they got closer, Rex's behavior changed dramatically. The dog's hackles rose, and he began barking in a pattern Marcus had never heard before, short, sharp bursts that carried obvious urgency and warning. "Martinez, Rex is alerting on something. The Coast Guard boat, get away from them! That's not Coast Guard, that's Morrison's people. Rex recognizes their scent patterns." Marcus jerked the wheel hard to starboard, bullets immediately splitting the water where they'd been heading. The fake Coast Guard vessel dropped its pretense and opened fire with automatic weapons. Rex moved to the stern of their boat and barked in a different pattern: 3 short, 2 long, 3 short, SOS in dog language. But he wasn't barking at Marcus, he was barking at something behind them. Marcus turned to see a genuine Coast Guard cutter breaking through the evening mist, its searchlight cutting through the growing darkness. Real federal agents were finally responding to the situation. But between them and safety lay Victor's boats, Morrison's fake Coast Guard vessel, and the dark waters of the Detroit River, where Lisa had effectively been murdered 2 years ago. Rex looked up at Marcus, and in the dog's intelligent eyes, Marcus saw something that looked remarkably like determination. The old warrior wasn't ready to quit, and neither was Marcus. As bullets cut through the air around them and the real Coast Guard cutter raced to their rescue, Marcus realized that Rex wasn't just leading him to safety. The dog was leading him to the final confrontation that would either destroy Judge Kellerman's criminal empire or kill them both in the attempt. Marcus yanked the speedboat into a sharp turn as automatic gunfire erupted from Morrison's fake Coast Guard vessel. Rex crouched low, but kept his eyes fixed on their pursuers, his enhanced senses tracking multiple threats simultaneously. The antidote was working. The dog's tactical awareness was sharper than Marcus had seen since their first meeting. "Agent Martinez, we need an extraction plan that doesn't get us killed." "Working on it. The real Coast Guard cutter is Captain Williams. He's clean, I guarantee it. But you need to reach him before Morrison's people box you in." Marcus counted at least 4 hostile boats converging on their position, their formation professional and coordinated. These weren't street criminals. They were operating with military precision. Rex suddenly barked and pointed toward the Detroit shoreline with his nose, not randomly, but at a specific point where an old industrial pier jutted into the water. The dog's message was clear. "That way. Martinez, Rex is directing us toward the old Riverside Industrial Pier. Does that mean anything to you? That's where Theodore kept his final insurance policy. If Rex is taking you there, he knows something we don't." Marcus turned toward shore as bullets continued to pepper the water around them. The speedboat's engine screamed in protest as he pushed it to maximum throttle. Rex braced against the bow like a canine figurehead, his ears flat against the wind, but his eyes alert. The pier was darker than the surrounding shoreline, clearly abandoned for years. But as they approached, Rex began barking in that same SOS pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. Almost immediately, lights began flashing from the pier in response, the same pattern. Theodore set up automated systems. Martinez's voice crackled through the radio. "Rex is triggering emergency protocols your great-uncle put in place for exactly this scenario." Marcus guided the boat to the pier as sections of what appeared to be rusted industrial equipment suddenly came to life. Concealed floodlights illuminated the water around them, and Marcus heard the distinctive whine of machinery powering up. Rex leaped onto the pier before Marcus had even secured the boat, immediately running to what looked like a control panel, hidden inside a rusted electrical housing. The dog reared up on his hind legs and pawed at a specific sequence of buttons. The pier transformed. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments. Automated spotlights locked onto the approaching hostile boats, and most impressively, a sophisticated electronic warfare system began jamming their enemies' communications and navigation systems. "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed. "Theodore built a fortress." "My father spent 15 years preparing for this moment," Martinez confirmed. "Rex knows how to operate everything. Let him lead." Rex was already moving to another control station, this one disguised as a shipping container. When Marcus opened it, he found a military-grade communications setup and enough firepower to arm a small squad. But what caught his attention was a large red button labeled "Pandora's Box" in Theodore's handwriting. Rex sat in front of the button and barked once, looking at Marcus expectantly. "Martinez, what's Pandora's Box?" "Theodore's nuclear option. It simultaneously transmits all his evidence files to every major news outlet, the FBI director, the Attorney General, and key congressional oversight committees. Once you press that button, there's no going back. Everyone will know everything." Marcus looked out at the hostile boats, now struggling against the jamming systems, but still advancing. Morrison's fake Coast Guard vessel was closest, its crew preparing to board the pier. "What about Judge Kellerman? If we release everything now, won't he just disappear?" "That's where Rex comes in. Show him the photograph wall from the command center." Marcus pulled out his phone and displayed the photos from Theodore's evidence wall. Rex studied them for a moment, then padded over to another disguised control panel. This one contained what looked like a sophisticated tracking system. When Rex pawed at Judge Kellerman's photo on Marcus's phone, then touched a specific icon on the tracking screen, a map appeared showing real-time GPS locations. One of the dots was labeled "Primary Target" and showed someone at the federal courthouse downtown. "Rex has been carrying tracking beacons," Martinez explained. "Every time he was in proximity to key targets, he was tagging them with microscopic devices. We know exactly where Kellerman is right now." Adoom! The pier shuddered as Morrison's boat reached it and armed men began climbing up, but Rex was ready. The dog ran to another control station and triggered a defensive system that Marcus could only describe as diabolical. Sections of the pier deck suddenly became electrified, non-lethally, but effectively incapacitating anyone not wearing the special boots Marcus found in Theodore's equipment cache. Morrison's men collapsed as their equipment shorted out and their muscles seized from the electrical current. The fake Coast Guard vessel drifted away from the pier, its crew temporarily neutralized. But Victor's boats were adapting, staying in the water and preparing to use heavier weapons against the pier itself. "Marcus," Martinez's voice carried new urgency. "I'm getting reports that Judge Kellerman is preparing to flee the country. Private Jet filed a flight plan for a non-extradition country. If he gets airborne, we lose him forever." Rex seemed to understand the conversation. He looked from the Pandora's box button to the tracking system showing Kellerman's location, then back at Marcus. The message was clear. Choose. They could stay and fight Victor's remaining forces, or they could try to stop Kellerman before he escaped. But they probably couldn't do both. Marcus made a decision that would have made Theodore proud. He pressed Pandora's box. Immediately, every screen on the pier lit up with confirmation messages. Transmission complete, CNN. Transmission complete, FBI Director. Transmission complete, Washington Post. And dozens more. Theodore's evidence was now in the hands of people who could act on it. But Rex wasn't finished. The dog ran to yet another control station, this one labeled Extraction Protocol, and began pawing frantically at the controls. "What's he doing now?" "Rex is calling in Theodore's final asset," Martinez replied, and Marcus could hear the smile in her voice. "Look up." The sound reached them before the sight. Helicopter rotors cutting through the night air. But this wasn't just any helicopter, it was a military transport. And as it descended toward the pier, Marcus could see snipers in the open doors methodically targeting Victor's boats. "Real FBI hostage rescue team," Martinez confirmed. "Theodore arranged for them to be on standby, activated only if Rex triggered the extraction protocol." The helicopter touched down on the pier's reinforced landing pad as sniper fire forced Victor's boats to retreat. Agent Martinez jumped out, followed by a team of genuine federal agents. But Rex wasn't celebrating yet. The dog ran to Marcus and began pulling on his sleeve, then pointed toward the tracking system still showing Kellerman's location. "He's right," Martinez said, checking her own equipment. "Kellerman's motorcade just left the courthouse. Private airfield is 20 minutes away." Marcus looked at the helicopter, then at Rex, then at the tracking system. The old dog's eyes held a determination that cut through his illness like a blade. "Can that helicopter catch a motorcade?" "Easily. But Marcus, this is the dangerous part. Kellerman will have protection, and once he realizes he's cornered, he'll try to take hostages," Marcus finished, "like he did with Lisa." Rex barked sharply and ran toward the helicopter, looking back at Marcus expectantly. The dog's message was unmistakable. "We finish this." As Marcus climbed aboard the FBI helicopter with Rex beside him, Agent Martinez handed him a tactical vest and headset. "My father spent 15 years building the case against Kellerman. Rex has been gathering evidence for 3 years, but you're the one who's going to end it." The helicopter lifted off from the pier as Victor's remaining boats disappeared into the Detroit River darkness. Below them, the city lights spread out like a circuit board, and somewhere in that maze of streets, Judge Kellerman was racing toward what he thought was freedom. Rex positioned himself at the helicopter's open door, his nose working to catch scents even at altitude. The dog's enhanced senses, freed from the poison that had been slowly killing him, were now operating at peak efficiency. "Target vehicle identified," the pilot announced. "Black SUV convoy, 3 vehicles, heading northwest toward Coleman Young International Airport." Marcus could see the motorcade now, racing through mostly empty streets with an urgency that spoke of desperation. Kellerman knew his empire was collapsing, and his only chance was to reach that private jet. "What's the plan?" Marcus asked. Martinez checked her weapon and looked at Rex, who was practically vibrating with anticipation. Rex is going to do what he was trained for, and you're going to make sure he gets the chance. As the helicopter began its descent toward the fleeing motorcade, Rex looked up at Marcus with eyes that held 15 years of Theodore's training, 3 years of gathering evidence against corruption, and a lifetime of loyalty to those who fought for justice. The final confrontation with Judge Kellerman was about to begin, and Marcus realized that Rex wasn't just seeking justice for Theodore's death. He was seeking justice for Lisa, for every victim of Kellerman's network, and for the oath they'd all sworn to protect and serve. The helicopter swooped low over the motorcade as it approached Coleman Young International Airport. Marcus could see the private airfield ahead, a sleek jet already warming up on the tarmac, with its engines creating heat shimmer in the night air. Judge Kellerman was less than 5 minutes from escaping American justice forever. Rex pressed against the helicopter's open door, his enhanced senses locked onto the target below. The dog's entire body was tense with anticipation, every muscle coiled for action. The antidote had done more than cure the poison. It had restored Rex to his prime operational condition. "Target convoy is approaching the airfield perimeter," the pilot announced. "Private security visible around the aircraft." Agent Martinez checked her equipment one final time. "Marcus, once we're on the ground, Rex is going to do something that might look dangerous, but trust him. Everything he's been trained for comes down to the next 10 minutes. The lead SUV in Kellerman's convoy suddenly swerved as sniper fire from the helicopter took out its front tires. The vehicle spun out, blocking the airfield entrance, but Kellerman's SUV, the middle vehicle, managed to swerve around it and continue toward the waiting jet. "He's going to make it," Marcus said, watching the judge's vehicle race across the tarmac. Rex barked sharply and looked at Marcus with eyes that held absolute certainty. The dog knew something they didn't. The helicopter touched down 50 yards from the private jet as Kellerman's SUV skidded to a stop beside the aircraft stairs. Marcus could see the judge emerge from the vehicle, a distinguished man in his 60s who moved with the arrogance of someone accustomed to being above the law. But as Kellerman climbed the aircraft stairs, Rex did something unexpected. Instead of pursuing directly, the dog ran to a specific spot on the tarmac and began digging frantically at what appeared to be solid asphalt. "What's he doing?" Marcus shouted over the aircraft engines. Martinez's eyes widened with understanding. "Theodore told me about this. Rex isn't just tracking Kellerman, he's tracking the evidence." Within seconds, Rex had uncovered a waterproof container hidden beneath a thin layer of asphalt and false surface material. Inside, Marcus found what looked like a military-grade recording device, still active, still recording. "Kellerman doesn't know it's there," Martinez explained. "Theodore planted it 3 months ago during a maintenance visit to this airfield. Everything Kellerman says, everyone he talks to, Rex led us to the smoking gun." The recording device's LED showed it was still transmitting. On the helicopter's communication system, they could hear Kellerman's voice clearly as he spoke to someone inside the aircraft. "The operation is burned. 15 years of work, gone because of one old man and his damn dog. But I still have the offshore accounts, and once we're in the air, there's nothing they can do." A second voice responded, one that made Marcus's blood freeze. "What about Morrison and the others? They're still valuable assets. Cut them loose." Morrison was sloppy with the court reporter's elimination. If he'd done it cleanly, none of this would have happened. Rex heard it too. The dog's hackles rose, and he let out a growl that carried more fury than Marcus had ever heard from any animal. These people were casually discussing Lisa's murder like a minor business inconvenience. But Kellerman wasn't finished. The 52 million was just operating capital anyway. "I've got 300 million in untraceable accounts. Enough to start over somewhere with better local officials." The aircraft engines began spooling up for takeoff. "We need to move now," Martinez said. But Rex was already in motion. The dog sprinted toward the aircraft, not in a straight line, but in a zigzag pattern that Marcus recognized from military working dog training. Rex was avoiding potential crossfire while closing distance on his target. Marcus and the FBI team followed, but Rex reached the aircraft first. Instead of trying to board, the dog positioned himself at the bottom of the retractable stairs and did something that demonstrated the true sophistication of his training. He began barking in a specific pattern that triggered an automated response. Hidden speakers around the airfield suddenly came to life, broadcasting every word from inside the aircraft. Theodore had apparently planted more than just recording devices. He'd created a system that Rex could activate to turn the judge's own escape route into a public confession. Kellerman's voice boomed across the airfield. "I own half the federal court system in this state. You think some evidence from a dead CIA operative and his dog is going to bring me down?" The voice that answered made Marcus's world tilt. "Robert, it's not just evidence anymore. It's a full confession, and it's being broadcast live." Marcus recognized the voice now. Agent Morrison, supposedly dead or captured at the pier, was inside the aircraft with Kellerman. "What do you mean, broadcast?" Kellerman's voice carried new panic. Rex barked once, sharply, and the airfield's communication system activated another of Theodore's surprises. Every major news network was now receiving the live audio feed from inside the aircraft. Judge Kellerman was confessing to corruption, money laundering, and murder on national television. The aircraft tried to taxi for takeoff, but Rex wasn't finished. The dog ran to another specific spot on the tarmac and pawed frantically at a concealed control panel. When Marcus reached him, he found the mechanism Rex wanted him to activate. "Emergency runway lights," Martinez breathed. "Theodore gave us control of the airfield." Marcus activated the system, and every runway light on the airfield began flashing in emergency patterns. The control tower's automated systems responded by locking down all takeoff permissions. Kellerman's pilot couldn't get clearance to leave the ground, but desperate men make dangerous choices. Through the aircraft windows, Marcus could see Morrison and Kellerman arguing violently. Then Morrison appeared at the aircraft door, a gun in his hand. "I'm not going down for this," Morrison shouted across the tarmac. "The dog and the veteran, this ends here." Rex positioned himself between Morrison and Marcus, his entire body radiating controlled aggression. This was what the dog had been trained for, not just to find evidence, but to protect his handler when the mission reached its most dangerous point. Morrison raised his weapon, but Rex was faster. The dog launched himself up the aircraft stairs with the speed and precision of a guided missile. Morrison's shot went wide as 90 pounds of highly trained German Shepherd tackled him back into the aircraft. Marcus and the FBI team reached the aircraft as Rex emerged, dragging something in his teeth, a briefcase that Morrison had been trying to destroy. Inside, Marcus found the original documents that proved the entire scope of Kellerman's network, including the specific order for Lisa's assassination. Judge Kellerman appeared at the aircraft door, hands raised in surrender. The broadcast system was still active, and his words carried across the airfield and into millions of homes. "I surrender. I want to make a deal." "Too late for deals," Agent Martinez said, placing him under arrest. Rex made sure of that. As federal agents secured the scene, Marcus knelt beside Rex, who was panting heavily but alert. The dog's tail wagged weakly as he dropped one final item at Marcus's feet, a small recording device that had been hidden in Morrison's jacket pocket. The device contained Morrison's detailed confession about Lisa's murder, recorded without his knowledge during the flight. Rex had been trained not just to gather evidence, but to gather the right evidence at the right moment. Marcus stood in the veterinary clinic, watching Rex play with a tennis ball in the recovery yard. The experimental treatment had worked. The poison was completely eliminated from the dog system, and Rex had made a full recovery. At 9 years old, he was still a formidable working dog, but he'd earned his retirement. Agent Martinez, now promoted to special agent in charge following the successful prosecution of Judge Kellerman's network, approached with a folder of documents. The final convictions came through today, she said. Kellerman got life without parole. Morrison got the death penalty for Lisa's murder. 17 other federal officials and 32 criminals are going away for a very long time. Marcus nodded, his eyes still on Rex. And the money? All recovered. The federal asset forfeiture laws that Kellerman used to steal from innocent people. They're being used to compensate his victims, including Lisa's family. Rex trotted over and sat beside Marcus, looking up with those intelligent dark eyes that had seen so much, remembered everything, and never wavered in their loyalty. "My father left me a letter," Martinez continued, "to be opened only after the mission was complete." She handed Marcus the envelope and he read Theodore's final words. "Marcus, if you're reading this, then Rex completed his mission and justice was served. The dog chose you just as much as I did. He's earned his peace, and so have you. But remember, Rex isn't just a retired working dog. He's a witness to history, a keeper of secrets, and proof that sometimes the best justice comes from the most unexpected places. Take care of each other. You both deserve happiness after everything you've sacrificed for truth." Marcus folded the letter and looked down at Rex, who was watching him with the patient expression of a soldier waiting for orders. "What do you say, boy? Ready to go home?" Rex's tail wagged once, definitively, not the weak gesture of a sick dog, but the confident response of a warrior who had completed his mission and was ready for whatever came next. As they walked toward Marcus's truck, newly purchased with part of the reward money for bringing down the network, Rex suddenly stopped and looked back at the clinic. For just a moment, Marcus could swear he saw Theodore's ghost in the dog's expression, proud, satisfied, and finally at peace. Rex barked once, a sound of closure, of mission accomplished, of justice served. Then he jumped into the passenger seat of the truck, ready to begin the next chapter of their lives together. Marcus started the engine and pulled out of the clinic parking lot, Rex beside him with his head out the window, ears flapping in the wind. In the rearview mirror, Marcus could see the federal courthouse where Kellerman had once wielded corrupt power, now serving as a symbol of justice restored. The inheritance that had started as a burden had become a mission. The sick dog that had seemed like another loss had become the partner who helped him find justice for Lisa and closure for himself. And the $52 million that had nearly gotten them both killed, it had become the tool that brought down the largest corruption network in federal court history. As they drove toward their new life together, Rex placed his head on Marcus's arm, a gesture of trust, companionship, and the unbreakable bond between two warriors who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. The last hunt was complete. The final mission was accomplished. And for the first time since Lisa's death, Marcus Holloway was ready to believe that sometimes, even in the darkest circumstances, justice would find a way to prevail.